Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is the first session of a essentially 5 or 6 day retreat, depending on how you look at it, where I'm going to be teaching students how to purify the mind to attain enlightenment. This is a retreat that oftentimes students have already been studying a lot in order to be able to come into this retreat. But if you're just starting off on the path or you haven't really been studying with me before, it's okay. I've had brand new students sometimes come to this particular retreat and you'll learn plenty. But what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to start off with meditation and just guiding you guys in a meditation session. And then afterwards, I'm going to teach what is enlightenment, because in terms of a retreat that's centered around a theme of purifying the mind to be able to get to enlightenment, you would like to know, well, what is enlightenment? So I'm going to teach you the detailed teachings on understanding what enlightenment is and the 4 stages of enlightenment and how an individual actually progresses to enlightenment. Then after that, I'm going to introduce you to the retreat and help you to understand all the different things that I'm going to be sharing as part of the retreat. And then we're going to end up finishing up today around 5 o'clock. And then we'll pick things up based on the schedule for the rest of the week tomorrow, and we'll continue on throughout the entire week. And you'll see all the different things that we have planned. We have different sessions and classes, we have excursions, we have all different kinds of things that you can get involved in. So if you'd like to start with meditation, I'm going to start with some chanting just to ease the mind into meditation like I typically do. If you guys would like to chant along, there's chanting sheets over there. You're welcome to help yourself. After the chanting, I'll come in with some guidance. Then there'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we'll come out of that with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath. Nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up to the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakawa Phiwate Ami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakawa Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusana Bhutto Bhagavati. All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome. Nice to see everyone here. Nice to see you. Welcome to everyone online as well. So what I'm going to do here to get us started is I'm going to share with you guys what enlightenment is, because this meditation or this retreat is all geared around helping you to understand the path to enlightenment and really kind of the last pieces of the path, because all the other programs and courses and retreats that I have, they all kind of feed into this one. The way that I design all the retreats and all the courses is that you don't need to have any prior knowledge before coming in and actually learning. But if you have done that learning, you'll actually find a retreat like this to be part of your progression towards understanding what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So I have, the foundation and the path to enlightenment course, which I teach every single month. So I teach that at least 12 to 15 times a year. Then I have the harmony and relationships course that I teach about 4 times a year. Then I have twice a year, I teach experiencing the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment. Once a year, I teach the meditation or the retreat of developing a life practice to attain the first stage of enlightenment, where everything that you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment is in that retreat. And then that feeds into this particular retreat, where it's purification of the mind to attain enlightenment. So when somebody's learning this content in this particular retreat, it's oftentimes because they've already studied in these other retreats, but I've also had brand new people come and they've never actually studied with me a day in their life or a minute in their life, and they've taken this retreat and they've really benefited from it. So no matter where you are, whether you've been studying with me or you've never studied with me before, there's things in this retreat that's going to help you. I'm going to introduce you to the retreat after I share with you guys what enlightenment is, because the best way to start this particular retreat is to help you understand what enlightenment is. The way that I teach is I teach for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions. Then I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes. I open up for questions. When we get to the question period, you guys are welcome to ask questions, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. And here at the temple, we have microphones. They're in the white bowl in the middle of the room. We also have some up here as well. If you have a question, if you could get a microphone and just press the gray button, you'll see the lights come on, and you can hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll also be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So in terms of this path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught, he figured out 2,500 years ago how to get to this mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. I'm going to help you guys to understand what this is. Because if you were going to take a journey somewhere and somebody came to you and said, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai? Well, if you've never been to Chiang Rai before, the first thing you'd probably say is, what is Chiang Rai? Right? You'd like to know, what is this place? And now if somebody said, oh, it's this city that's in the north, it's like 3 hours from Chiang Mai, you've got to go through the mountains. And once you get over the mountains and you'll get there, you'll see this and you'll see that and you'll see this and you'll say that. You'll be like, sounds pretty interesting. I'd like to go. Right? And now you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to that town. And once you're there, you'll actually know that you're there because you will start seeing the things that are familiar to you based on this person's description of what is Chiang Rai. So getting to enlightenment is the same way. If you have even the remote interest in getting to enlightenment, if somebody was like, hey, are you on the path to enlightenment? Well, one of the first things you might ask is, well, what is enlightenment? And if you understand what enlightenment is, and you understand what you're going to be experiencing when your mind gets to that point, you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once your mind is actually enlightened, you'll know that you've actually attained it. So I start this retreat and some other programs that I teach as well, helping you to understand what is enlightenment. So as I go, anytime you guys have questions, just let me know. I'll share whatever answers you guys need in order to help you. I will share that with you. Okay. So the first thing to understand in terms of what is enlightenment is it's very challenging for the unenlightened mind to imagine and understand what enlightenment is. At the end of our conversation here today, you're going to know more about what enlightenment is than you do right now. But just understand that by the time we're done, you're not going to know everything there is about enlightenment. Because it's kind of like if you've never had chocolate ice cream before, and I sat here and I described chocolate ice cream for you, I could sit here and describe it all day long, and you'll know more about what chocolate ice cream tastes like when we're done, but you won't fully know what it's like until you've actually tasted it, right? So you need to experience tasting chocolate ice cream so you'll know more about it. So you can learn a little bit more about what chocolate ice cream is about by talking about it, but it's when you actually taste it that you're going to truly know for yourself. So the same thing is true with enlightenment, that I can sit here and describe it to you all day long, and you'll know more about it when we're done, but you're not going to know everything there is to know about it by the time we're done. And just understand that. So first, what enlightenment is enlightenment is a mental state that you attain during this life. It can also be attained at death as well. This can be attained in the human existence, and heavenly beings can attain this as well, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't experience any discontent feelings. There's no anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that is eliminated from the mind. You'll notice that the mind has concentration, that it's steady, that it's stable, it's unshakable. There's nothing that can occur that's going to shake up the mind. You'll notice that the mind is calm and relaxed, but yet attentive and alert. Because oftentimes when we say calm and relaxed, we kind of think like vegging out, like, I'm so calm, so relaxed. And the mind's kind of dull and lethargic there, right? But that's not what the enlightened mind is experiencing. The mind is calm and relaxed, but it's attentive, it's alert, it's sharp. It's still sharp. Okay. And this individual isn't experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. And they're not going to experience rebirth into a new existence. The way that this is accomplished is through purifying the mind of craving, anger, and ignorance. This is a high-level way of referring to the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots. The Buddha talks about these. We're going to discuss these as part of this retreat, and I'm going to help you to understand what these are and why it's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. So the mind will have been purified of this. The path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind. You're cleaning up the mind. So while enlightenment itself is a mental state that you attain through training the mind, the path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind. So one of the ways we say it is you're attaining enlightenment. Right? Another way to say it is that your mind's already enlightened, that you just need to get these pollutions out of the way by purifying the mind, and that's what's going to allow you to experience the enlightened qualities of the mind. So one of the ways to think about it is like there's the sun. It's always there. It's just that when there's clouds in front of the sun, you can't experience the rays of the sun shining through. So you've got to get the clouds out of the way so the rays of the sun can shine through. Right? So the sun was always there. It's just that the clouds were blocking it. It's the same thing with the enlightened mind, that your mind right now is actually enlightened, but you've got these pollutions that are in the way that are hindering you from experiencing those qualities. So when you get those pollutions out of the way, now the qualities of enlightenment can shine through more and more and more. The only difference in this analogy is that the clouds are eventually going to come back and block the sun. But in the enlightened mental state, you'll never experience the unenlightened mental state ever again. Once you get those pollutions out of the mind, once you purify the mind, it can never become polluted ever again. So you're purifying the mind of these certain pollutions. At a high level, we refer to them as craving, anger, and ignorance. At a detailed level, we call them the 10 fetters, which I'm going to introduce you to here in a moment. But part of this retreat is I'm going to be spending time talking about each one of these pollutions, because these are the things that are hindering you from experiencing enlightenment. I'm going to go through each individual fetter, spending about an hour to an hour and a half on each one of them, explaining to you what it is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So the path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind. Sometimes people refer to enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. I don't describe it this way. Even though there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state, I just don't describe it this way, because oftentimes when people hear the word happy or happiness, they think about the happiness that they experience in the unenlightened state. The happiness that you experience in the unenlightened state is conditional happiness, that you will be happy based on some condition. Your bank account balance is up here, maybe you're happy, right? Or if you get a new car, you might be happy. Or you get a new house, you're happy, right? Because there's some condition that has to be met. Maybe you're going on vacation, so you're happy, right? You see a long lost friend that you haven't seen in 20 years and you're happy. There needs to be some condition that is producing that. And therefore, that happiness is temporary. That happiness is going to arise, it's going to change, and then it's going to fade away. Because if you get happy when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. If you get really happy when you go on vacation, that means when you need to go back home, you're going to be sad. If you get really happy with that new house, that means as it deteriorates and it gets old, you're not going to be happy with it anymore. When you see that brand new friend or that long lost friend that you haven't seen for 20 years, you'll be really happy. But then when you can't see them anymore and it's time to separate and go your separate ways, you'll be sad and frustrated. So that's conditional happiness. That's what an unenlightened being experiences. What an enlightened being experiences is unconditional happiness. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to experience happiness. The mind is just always happy. It's inwardly cheerful, bright, glad, and uplifted. So there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state, but it's unconditioned. Oftentimes what people are describing when they talk about this ultimate bliss that is experienced as you're making your way to enlightenment is they're talking about the jhanas. There's these 4 preliminary phases that the mind experiences. on the way to enlightenment, which I'm going to teach you guys as part of this retreat. This is where you experience enhanced qualities of mind. And when you're experiencing those enhanced qualities of mind, there's this ultimate bliss that comes into the mind. And it's like night and day compared to when you were off the path to enlightenment until you're experiencing the jhanas. And oftentimes, because of this improved and enhanced qualities of mind that people are experiencing, they think they're actually enlightened, but they're not enlightened yet. This is where you can hear some people say that enlightened beings still experience anger or sadness or frustration or agitation. In fact, right now, if you asked Google, does enlightened beings still experience anger and frustration? Google will tell you that they do. But this isn't actually true. It's not true that enlightened beings don't experience that. But there's some people who are in the jhanas or potentially in the jhanas, thinking that they're enlightened, experiencing this ultimate bliss, and they're describing enlightenment as ultimate bliss. And they will say that enlightened beings still get angry because they think they're enlightened and they still get angry and they still get frustrated. So they're describing enlightenment in that way based on their experiences. But I know with 100% certainty that enlightened beings don't experience that. So while there is this ultimate bliss that you oftentimes experience as you're making your way through the jhanas, that's not enlightenment yet. That's still a preliminary phase that the mind's going through as it's making its way to enlightenment. Instead, the way to think about enlightenment is that the mind's inwardly peaceful, joyful, that it's bright, cheerful, glad, and uplifted at all times. There's nothing that can shake up the mind. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if you got a phone call that your mom is dead or in a terrible car accident, you wouldn't be upset in that situation because it's not your love that's causing that. What's causing the mind to be shaken up in that situation is the craving for permanence, wanting and expecting things to be permanent. And that's what's causing the mind to experience that. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you can maintain your peace. You can maintain your joy. You're not joyful because mom died. You're joyful despite the fact that she died, that you understand that this is impermanence and your mind is not going to be shaken up by that situation. Okay, so this is what enlightenment is. The advantages of getting to enlightenment is that the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. This is going to be very beneficial for you because now you can make wise decisions. When your mind is all shaken up with discontentedness, when you're angry and frustrated, when you're experiencing stress and anxiety, you can't make wise decisions. So an advantage of getting to enlightenment is that your mind is permanently peaceful and joyful. So therefore, you can take in any kind of situation that's happening and figure out what would be the wise decision to make. So therefore, you'll experience wholesome results coming back to you. You'll notice that you have a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because your mind's performing optimally at that point. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have those pollutions that are in your mind. In the unenlightened state, you'll lack focus, concentration, clarity, or memory because those pollutions are hindering your mind from being able to experience that. But when you get that out of the mind and you uproot it, the mind will perform optimally. So you will notice that you won't have any of these discontent feelings. This is a list that if you've been studying with me for any amount of time, you hear me say this list many, 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 many times. This is the feelings in others that you're not going to experience any longer because the causes and conditions that produce those have been uprooted. The causes and conditions that are producing them are the fetters, the pollutions of mind, the 10 individual fetters that I'm going to be teaching as part of this retreat. When you get those out of the mind, you won't experience these anymore because the causes and conditions that are producing them have been uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom about the world that other people don't have. You'll be in situations as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment where people are really struggling with certain situations. And you look at that situation and it looks so easy and straightforward to you because you have wisdom about the world that that person doesn't have. This is where you need to keep your ego in check. That if you still have ego and you're noticing that other people are struggling with certain challenges, that sometimes your mind can have conceit that comes out. You need to be able to understand that they're struggling because they're lacking certain wisdom about the world that you've had the benefit of being able to acquire. And just be appreciative and have gratitude of that. And at the same time, have loving kindness and compassion for those beings. So you're going to have this deep wisdom in the mind. You're also going to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful towards all beings. In the unenlightened state, you'll be challenged with this. There'll be certain situations where you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly and disrespectful. You'll be bitter and harsh and hostile. And in the unenlightened state, you'll think it's the other person who's causing you to actually do that, where in reality, it's coming from your own mind. It's not coming from the other person. But by the time you get to enlightenment, when you uproot those pollutions out of the mind, you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. Doesn't matter what's happening. You're not causing any harm in the world, that you're no longer causing harm, meaning causing harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, their reputation. You've trained your mind that you're not doing those things anymore. And because of this, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming, that they're at ease, that in the unenlightened state, you'll have a certain amount of relationships that are problematic, that are difficult for you, because your mind is being bitter and harsh and hostile in these situations. You have these pollutions of the mind. Haven't figured out how to have harmonious relationships with everybody yet. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll see that your relationships will be at ease. So this is some of the advantages of getting to enlightenment. The way that you actually make your way to enlightenment is you start out with these core central teachings. You start out with learning the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, and the 5 precepts. I'm going to be teaching these 3 as part of this retreat, just as a refresher. And for some of you guys, you might not have ever actually learned those before. The 5 precepts is something that I teach in other programs. You're going to need to learn the Brahma Viharas. These are 4 healthy mental states that are actually antidoting certain symptoms in the mind. This is where the Buddha gets the reputation of being like a doctor. There's certain symptoms, and then you apply a certain prescription that antidotes that. So you're going to need to know that. Then the 10 fetters, you're going to learn a lot about that in this particular retreat. You're going to learn about the 7 factors of enlightenment. I'm going to teach you that here in a moment. And then you're going to need extensive meditation training. This is to really just get started, right? There's other teachings beyond this that you're going to need to know. But when you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, it's important that you understand that it's not based in belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're learning, investigating, and examining his teachings. You'll be able to do that through what I'm sharing with you and through reading the books that I share and all these other things. But then you're going to need to reflect on those teachings, independently verify whether they're true or they're false. Then you're going to need to practice those teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, and start making decisions through those teachings. That's where you see the real results occurring for yourself. That if you were just to learn these teachings intellectually, there's not going to be any change. Right? You need to learn them, yes, to understand them intellectually, but then you need to reflect on them to verify if they're true or they're false. Then you're going to need to practice the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and making decisions through those teachings. That's where things really change for you. So this is how an individual would get started implementing these core central teachings. So I'm going to pause here before I go on any further and see if you guys have any questions on anything that I've shared. Looks like Lyndon has a question. For those of you guys online, remember you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
Okay. Thank you, teacher. So I have a question about enlightenment. Can you come back to the previous 2 slides, I believe? Yes, about like the enlightenment. Because my question. So here we all talk about like the quality of the enlightenment mind, I would say. But my question is more like, is there a way or about like from the quantity perspective to understand the difference between ordinary people and the enlightened people, like the difference? For example, it's like, can I see for ordinary people, the joyful level or joyful state for them usually is like a 1 to 10. And then for enlightened beings, what that number will be? Yes.
The number is like 5 million.
5 million. Okay.
But it's not the bouncing off the walls excitement that you're used to. So the joy isn't bouncing off the walls excitement.
It's not happy.
The joy is this inward joy where the mind is just always uplifted and bright and cheerful at all times.
I see. Wow. Then, which means it's a completely different state of the mind.
Completely different
the living state.
Yeah. And there's nothing that can shake it up. When you wake up in the morning, you're joyful. Before you even opened your eyes, you're joyful. All day long, you're joyful. And as you go to sleep at night, you're joyful. There's nothing that can shake that up. And by the way, I usually don't say like ordinary people and enlightened people because it creates like a hierarchy.
Right.
An enlightened being doesn't think in terms of a hierarchy. They think about everybody being equal. So these individuals who are unenlightened, they just haven't learned, they haven't cultivated their mind yet. These people who are enlightened, they've spent time cultivating their mind and training their mind. They've just done things differently in their life. And these people over here aren't any less of a person. We're all the same, but it's just that these people were able to focus on training their mind. Where like these people over here are carpenters, these people over here are electricians. This person over here is a person who makes dresses and does other things. So they have different skills and different abilities.
Right.
And I think of that in the same way as enlightenment, that these people over here have trained their mind and they've taken the opportunity to do that. And now these people over here just haven't done that yet. Now they have the opportunity to do it.
Got it. Yeah. And a follow-up question is, is it like the people gradually from like the 10 to million, or they have like a jumping, like for example, reach to 100 and then tomorrow will be like a 10,000 or something?
What do you mean, the joy?
The joy level.
So the joy, for an individual who's making their way to enlightenment, as you know, it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Right. It's not like there's a moment or instantaneous moment that you get to enlightenment. It's also not just meditation that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. There's much more than just meditation. So what happens is this joy that I'm talking about, it's unconditioned joy. So the joy, it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. So what an individual will experience that's making their way to enlightenment is, as they're in the jhanas and they're starting to experience that, they'll start getting these glimpses of this unconditioned joy, where maybe for a few minutes or a few hours or even a few days or weeks, you can notice that there's this unconditioned joy in the mind where you're just joyful. There doesn't need to be anything met. You might have already experienced that in your life at different times, maybe just for a few minutes or a few seconds, where it's just like, wow, I don't need anything. I could just sit here all day and just completely be joyful. But then because your mind is unenlightened, something happens and now you're frustrated or now you're agitated. So you'll kind of start getting these glimpses where you'll have these windows of time where your mind will start experiencing this unconditioned joy, where it's either on or it's off. It doesn't arise, change, or fade away. It's just either on or off. It's either there or it's not. Because what happens is these pollutions are deeply rooted in the mind. And those pollutions being deeply rooted in the mind, you can get to different periods of time, whether it's a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, where those pollutions have subsided. They're still in there, but they're subsided. But the mind is kind of getting a glimpse of what it's like to experience this unconditioned joy. But then something happens and it kind of kicks up those pollutions in the mind. And now you experience the frustration or the agitation or annoyance. So as you're making your way through the stages of enlightenment and through the jhanas and all of this, you'll start experiencing these wider and wider windows of time that you're experiencing this joy. But it doesn't arise, change, or fade away. It's either on or off. So you might experience a day, right? And then you get a period of time where you're disgruntled and frustrated, right? And that might be going on for a little while, but then you maybe get 2 or 3 days where you're happy and joyful, right? It's unconditioned happiness. And then that'll go away. And then you'll be dealing with some frustration and agitation. And then maybe you'll get 5 days. And then you'll experience that for a period of time, and then that'll go away. And then over time, this window of time just keeps getting wider and wider and wider, where by the time you're in the 3rd stage of enlightenment, you could be experiencing 3 months or even 6 months of complete joy, maybe even thinking you're enlightened. And then boom, there's going to be a little bit of discontentedness that comes into your mind. So this window of time just keeps getting wider and wider and wider until eventually it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You won't have any discontentedness at all during that period of time, not even the slightest ickiness, and you'll know your mind is enlightened. So that's how you gradually, the progression is gradual, but the joy itself is either on or off. It's not arising, changing, and fading away. Mm-hmm.
So the joyful level is like on or off. It's either 10 or 5 million. Is that
For an enlightened being? Or on your way to enlightenment?
Yeah.
On your way to enlightenment, the joy that you experience in the enlightened mental state, it's essentially the same joy that you're experiencing when you're in the jhanas. It's just that it's permanent when you're in the enlightened mental state. So it seems more significant because it's long term and you don't experience any discontentedness like frustration or agitation or annoyance. In the jhanas, it's short lived. Even if it's just for a couple of days, it's short lived. Still, it's the same joy. It's the same unconditioned joy, but it doesn't feel as impactful. It doesn't have the same experience because it's short lived. Where over here in the enlightened mental state, because it's permanent and it's lasting and long term, and you experience it long term, it feels more significant when your mind is in that state versus the joy you're experiencing in the jhanas.
Got it. Then in this case, like from the personal, because you said like we have to experience the enlightenment, right? So from the experience perspective, then looks like the jhanas is like the breakthrough point that you can feel, because like a joyful level is just from 10 direct to 5 million, right? So it's pretty significant. It's like the point that we know that the Buddha's teaching works, and it's the time to taste the enlightenment, right?
Exactly. That's why some people call it ultimate bliss, because when your mind starts getting a taste of that joy in the jhanas, it's like ultimate bliss. It's like, oh my God, I had no idea my mind was able to do that. Wow, that is phenomenal, right? It like almost like throws you into a loop that you're in when you're in those jhanas. So it is very transformative. Yes, it's giving you that glimpse, that taste of what enlightenment could potentially be like. It's giving you like a little bit of a window. I call it the light bulb is flickering. And yes, that's where you start building a lot of confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, because you can see like, oh my gosh, I did all these things that the Buddha taught, and it's led to these enhanced qualities of mind. Wow, this stuff really works. And that's where you get rid of that fetter of doubt through the jhanas. And that's a real turning point for you when you're experiencing those enhanced qualities of mind. Now, some people think that those jhanas are just experienced during meditation, but that's not actually true. You're actually experiencing those qualities at all times during your day. It's not just during meditation. And it's also that you're not turning those on and turning those off. Sometimes people think that that's the case. The fact is that you're experiencing those enhanced qualities all throughout your day. And you'll understand this more when I teach you about the jhanas.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You have a question?
Is how do you follow the path to enlightenment and purify the mind when you live in the real world, and sometimes the real world sucks? So there's murder and war, and there's human trafficking, and there's pedophiles, and there's things that we get really discontent about. So how do you balance that? And
okay, so it's not the outside world that's causing these inner feelings. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to teach the very first teaching of the Buddha called the Four Noble Truths, where you're going to be able to see in a way that you can independently verify that it's the mind itself that's causing these feelings. It's not the murderers, it's not the rapists or the pedophiles or the human trafficking. That's not what's causing the mind to be shaken up. That's what the mind thinks in the unenlightened state. It firmly believes that it's the outside world that's causing these things. So once you're on the path to enlightenment and you have done what we call an established right view, you'll be able to see very clearly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And that's where you can then eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing it. So now you can navigate the world and live in this same world and not be affected by it. One of the famous quotes that the Buddha shares is he says, I was born of this world and I grew up in this world, but I am not soiled by the world, right? So if your mind is growing up in this world and you're taking on all this pollution of the mind, your mind is soiled by this world, right? And now you're going to think that, oh, it's the world that's causing me to experience all these things. But by the time you've trained your mind and you've purified your mind, you've gotten rid of these pollutions, you have transformed your mind to the point where while you were born in this world and you live in this world and you grew up in this world, you're not soiled by the world, that this things that are happening in the world no longer affect the mind. It's not your love, it's not your care that's causing the shaking up of the mind, the sadness and the frustration when you see these things. It's actually these pollutions of the mind. So getting on the path to enlightenment is to heal from what's hurting you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is not the outside world, it's what's going on in the inner world. So you're training the inner world to be able to get rid of the causes and conditions that keep causing it to form feelings based on what's happening in the world. So this is something that you'll understand more when you understand the Four Noble Truths tomorrow. It sounds like the mic's not working.
How about now?
There you go.
To clarify, though, that path seems kind of self-involved because you're working on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's very self-focused.
Yes.
So what are we doing to alleviate those conditions of discontentedness instead of inwardly focusing? Shouldn't we also be outwardly focusing and serving in some way to eliminate, not in our mind, but in reality?
So this path is all about you working on your mind. It's not about saving somebody else. If somebody else is having difficulties in the world, they've got to make the decisions to be able to train their mind. What you're doing is you're doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development on your own mind. And part of that work is to learn how to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing with the people around you, sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. You're also practicing loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You're practicing compassion, which is concern for the misfortunes of others. But that doesn't obligate you to go out into the world and do any particular thing. Because when somebody thinks that it's the world that is causing them to be angry and frustrated, they will want to go out into the world and quote unquote change the world, where your role in this life in order to be able to get to peace and joy isn't to change the world. The world is functioning based on these natural laws. What the thing that the mind is having difficulties with is having wisdom to understand how this world truly functions, how the world truly works. So because the mind in the unenlightened state has this lack of wisdom, it will be confused about how the world truly works, and it will actually firmly believe that it's other people who are causing them to experience these feelings. And what people will tend to do is feel like they need to go out into the world and fix the world. And they think if they fix the world, now they're going to get to peace and joy. But that's not the way this works. The way you get to enlightenment is you've got to fix your own mind. And if each individual person chooses to do that, wonderful. But you're not getting to peace and joy because you've changed the outer world. You're changing the inner world. That's what's going to get to your peace and joy. Mm-hmm. You understand more as you go. If you decide to keep learning, you'll be able to understand more. Okay? All right. So I don't see any other questions online or here. So let's talk about the 10 fetters. This is where you'll start to understand what it is that you're going to be learning. I'll just introduce them to you here just a little bit. But then as part of this retreat, I'm going to be teaching you each individual fetter. So personal existence view is where the mind firmly believes that this body or this mind is you. It's confused. It thinks that this self-image or this self-identity is you, and it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you'll cling to this, and you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. And if you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, that's where you'll be embarrassed or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. So for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilt something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, That's your personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only be happy if you're being perceived that way. So this is something that you need to eliminate. We're going to be talking about this one a lot, so we're going to dive into this. Each one of these we're actually going to be talking about a lot. You need to be able to get to a point where you realize that this body is not you, this mind is not you, and you let go of wanting others to perceive you in a certain way. And we'll talk about this. Not only am I going to explain what it is, I'm going to explain the symptoms, I'm going to explain the techniques of how to get rid of it, and I'm going to explain to you how to know that you've eliminated it from the mind as well. Then there's something called doubt. Doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha and the ability of them to actually help you to get to enlightenment. But you don't actually eliminate your doubt through blind belief or faith or anything like that. You actually investigate his teachings. By investigating his teachings and turning your mind into an inquisitive mind, you eventually get to a point where there's confidence because you've seen the transformation. You've seen improvement in your mind and in your life. So we're going to go through that in detail and explain to you more about that. Then there's something called wrong behavior and observances. In the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of moral conduct that you have that is unwise. When you're being bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, this is unwise moral conduct. And that's coming from you. It's not coming from the other people. So you need to be able to shed this unwise moral conduct. That would help you to eliminate wrong behavior. It's kind of like if there was a pipe and it had oil in it and it busted and it was spewing oil all over the world. Well, that's what is happening with the unwise moral conduct. You're spewing this oil all over the world. You're spewing this unwise moral conduct all over the world. So you'd like to shut that down so you're no longer doing that. Then there's something called wrong observances. This is where the mind thinks that it's rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that is going to lead to some kind of beneficial results in your day-to-day life. You might have been involved in those kinds of things. This is something that the mind needs to realize is untrue. There's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to lead to beneficial results in your life. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to improve your relationships with your life partner or your profession or anything like that. The underlying thing that the Buddha discovered, which you guys are going to hear about here in a moment, is that the mind lacks wisdom. The mind needs to cultivate wisdom, and there's no amount of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship that are actually going to help you to cultivate wisdom. So you need to be able to understand that, and we're going to talk about that some more. Then there's something called sensual desire. This is where the mind is longing, yearning through the senses. The senses are the eyes, ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. These 6 sense bases, the mind is craving agreeable contact. The mind wants things to be agreeable. And if you experience agreeable contact, you'll experience pleasant feelings. And if you have disagreeable contact, you'll experience painful feelings. So for example, if you hear music in your ear, a certain sound that you typically listen to this music, you might get really happy and really excited about that. But then when you hear a different type of music that you don't listen to and you see it to be disagreeable, you'll get frustrated and angry. It's your central desire that's causing that because the mind is wanting this permanently agreeable contact. And when you're getting what you want and what you expect and what you agree with, you get pleasant feelings. But when you get the disagreeable contact, you get the painful feelings. And when those painful feelings are arising, the mind firmly believes that it's being caused by something external in the unenlightened state. And that's where the ill will can oftentimes arise. This is the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility. You might have pushed people away out of your life, like friends and family, thinking that that was going to solve your problem. Or you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Or you might have started putting expectations on people and trying to pressure them or control them to do things a certain way. This is what the mind does when it thinks the problem's external. It will push people away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or it'll put expectations on them and try to control them and force them to do things your way, or attempt to anyway. And you'll just experience the damage in your relationships by doing this. So these are what's called the lower fetters. We're going to go through each of these in detail as part of this retreat. Here, I'm just kind of lightly introducing them to you. Then there's something called the higher fetters. The higher fetters are starting with desire for form and desire for formless. I'm going to talk about these two together because they're very similar. This is where you have a desire to exist in one of the realms, like desire for form is that you might have a desire to be in the animal realm, or you might have a desire to be in the human realm, where your mind is holding on and craving existence. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I thought it'd be really cool to be a bird. I had a desire to be a bird. I was like, man, this would be really cool. I could fly around. I could check people out. I could sit on top of the roof of a house and look down and check out everybody. I wouldn't have to be in traffic. This would be really good, right? So I wasn't happy or content in my present existence. I was longing, yearning for something else. Right? So if you have desire for form, you're not content in your present existence. You're wanting something that you don't have. And that's where there's the disgruntledness in the mind, that you're not content in the present moment. And then you can have the same thing with desire for formless, where someone can have a desire to exist in one of the formless realms. There's the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, which is ghost, and then there's the heavenly realm. That's the one that people typically really want to be in, right? But none of these realms are actually permanent. There are some people who do want to be in hell, believe it or not. There's people that are like that. But if you have a desire to exist in one of these realms, that means you're not content in the present moment. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is to be able to get content in the present moment. Then there's something called conceit. Conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being above people or thinking of yourself as being below people, thinking of yourself as being superior or inferior to others. As long as you have this in your mind, in certain situations, you're going to talk down to people. And in other situations, you're going to talk up to people. You're going to be shaken up when you're around your boss, or maybe a famous celebrity or politician. You're going to be shaken up. And now it's going to affect you in your relationships and your ability to be successful in life. So you need to get rid of this conceit. This is oftentimes referred to as the ego. Personal existence view and conceit are typically referred to in that way, but the Buddha didn't use that word because it didn't exist during his lifetime. So he separated it wisely into these two different things. So we're going to be talking about conceit and how this plagues your mind and how it creates difficulties for you and how to actually eliminate it. Then there's something called restlessness. Well, restlessness is the overactivity of the mind, the anxiety of the mind. If you've ever sat somewhere and you kind of like bobbed your knee a little bit, or you tapped your finger, or you're constantly moving, this is the restlessness that the mind has. And now it's coming out through the body. So you can get rid of this, because as long as you have this in your mind, you're not going to be peaceful. You're not going to be joyful. So you need to get to a point where your mind's stable and steady, that it's not having this overactivity in the mind. So I'm going to teach you about that and how to eliminate it. And then the fetter of all fetters, the pollution of all pollutions. It's oftentimes referred to as ignorance. I like to refer to it as the unknowing of true reality, because people are translating what the Buddha taught into English. And the word ignorance isn't the best word to use, because an individual who's enlightened, and surely a Buddha, isn't going to refer to someone as ignorant or stupid or foolish. Sometimes you hear people talking like that in relationship to the Buddha. But an enlightened being doesn't talk that way. An enlightened being doesn't talk in a derogatory, degrading, and diminishing way towards others. So a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, confusion, misunderstanding, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because of that, it stays stuck in the unenlightened state. One of the things that the mind doesn't understand is something like the three universal truths, or the four noble truths, or the eightfold path. It doesn't understand the natural law of karma. It doesn't understand that it even has these 10 fetters. You might not have even ever heard of the 10 fetters before, and the fact that your mind actually has these in the mind. This is the lack of wisdom that the mind has. It just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because it doesn't understand how the world truly works, it doesn't understand true reality, it continues to have difficulties and struggles over and over and over again. So that's why on the path to enlightenment, your ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom. That's what's going to transform this. That's why you can't believe any of the teachings. You're never interested in believing something, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. You're not interested in belief. You've got to get to wisdom so you can see the truth about how these natural laws truly work in the world. That's what we mean when we say awakening to enlightenment or to be awake. It is to mean that you're cultivated wisdom and now you understand how the world truly works. When you don't understand natural laws, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. That's what we did with the natural law of gravity. We struggled. We had difficulties. We fell down. We hit our head. We bumped our elbows. We cried and cried and cried when we were a little kid because we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we cultivated wisdom of that natural law. And now you might say that we are fully awake to the natural law of gravity. We can make wise decisions based on this. We're not believing in this natural law. We can see the truth for ourselves, right? It doesn't take a scientist to be able to see, oh, there's the natural law of gravity. There it is, right? So we're not believing in this natural law. And now we make wiser decisions. We tie our shoes tighter. We look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. And that's why we experience improved results, right? We don't experience the same struggles and difficulties related to the natural law of gravity. But there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not. And that's what the mind is ignorant to, that it has this lack of wisdom or this misunderstanding. And because it doesn't understand these natural laws, the mind struggles and has difficulties. That's what the stress and the anxiety is. That's what the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other things are. So what you're doing on this path, just like you did with the natural law of gravity, is you're awakening. You're cultivating wisdom so that now when you understand these natural laws, now you can make wiser and wiser decisions. Another way to think about it is what the Buddha is essentially doing is he's giving you an instruction manual to this being who you are, right? Nobody gave you an instruction manual to this being, but you have an instruction manual probably for your computer, for your camera, right? I have a picture of water on my desk at home. It probably came with an instruction manual. Everything has an instruction manual, but no one's giving you an instruction manual of how this thing works. How does this thing work? Right? How does this mind work? That's what the Buddha is giving you. But the mind's ignorant to that. It lacks wisdom of that. And that's what he's helping you to be able to do, is to see how this mind works. So he's taking human psychology and he's boiling it down to a common language that everybody and anybody can understand. And now once you understand how this mind works, now you can skillfully work with it and train it to get to this point where it's completely peaceful and joyful. So that's the wisdom that you're cultivating about these natural laws and how this mind works, how the world truly works. This is called true reality, that you're cultivating wisdom of true reality and how things truly work. So any questions on any of the fetters? I know I just touched on them very lightly, but I thought I would do this as we enter into this retreat, since we're going to be spending a lot of time on each one of these. No questions? Okay, I don't see any online either. Okay, so as you're eliminating the fetters, you're moving through the 4 stages of enlightenment. They're called stream entry or stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. These are the 4 stages that the mind's moving through. And I'm going to show you how the mind moves through those, but it's helpful to actually understand them in terms of the way the Buddha is talking about them here. The way we refer to them nowadays is we might just say 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stage of enlightenment. It's a really simple way to explain it. Your mind's actually enlightened when you're in the 4th stage. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, he referred to it in this way, which is actually quite helpful because it helps you to understand what you're experiencing. So for example, this 1st stage of enlightenment, it's referred to as a stream enterer. The reason why is because just like a log enters the stream, it's going to eventually get to the ocean. It's just a matter of time. The same thing is true when you get to the 1st stage of enlightenment. you will get to enlightenment. It's just a matter of time, right? So that's why it's helpful to understand it that way. Same thing with this once returner. If you get to this stage of enlightenment and you die, you're going to come back into the world one more time, and then you're going to get to enlightenment in that existence. Then the third stage of enlightenment is referred to as a non-returner. If you die in that stage of enlightenment, you're not going to come back to this world. You're going to be reborn into the heavenly world, and you'll experience enlightenment from that existence. And then the fourth stage, where the mind is actually enlightened, it's referred to as an arhat. We might refer to this person as an enlightened being, but they use the term arhat, meaning they fully purified their mind. So I'm going to show you about these, and then we're going to talk about what a Buddha is so that you understand what that is. It's not a stage of enlightenment. So the first stage of enlightenment, you would have already done a lot of preliminary work to be able to get to the point where you're in this first stage of enlightenment. And the way that you got into that first stage of enlightenment is you put together all those core central teachings, you moved through the jhanas, and now ultimately you got to a point where you've eliminated the first three fetters of personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior, and observances. And when you're in that first stage of enlightenment, the discontentedness that you're experiencing has significantly reduced. That you'll see that whatever you were experiencing when you were off the path to enlightenment to when you got into that first stage of enlightenment, it's significantly reduced. It's a mere fraction of what it once was. You're still experiencing discontentedness, but it's just a fraction of what it once was. So in this stage of enlightenment, it's really important because once you get there, your mind cannot regress backwards from that point forward. It can only move forward in forward direction. And if you die in that stage of enlightenment, you're going to come back into the human world a maximum of 7 times before you'll actually get to enlightenment. Then if you're moving from the from the first stage to the second stage, we call this a once returner. You've already eliminated the first 3 fetters of personal existence view, doubts, and wrong behavior and observances, but then you've thinned out number 4 and 5, sensual desire and ill will. What it means to thin it out is that it's not as predominant as it once was. You might think back to your childhood, where you're maybe in your teenage years. You might have had a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness and hostility, but maybe that's thinned out a little bit. That doesn't mean you're in the second stage of enlightenment, but I'm just explaining to you what it means to thin out a fetter, that it's not as predominant as it once was. It's not as strong as it once was, but it's still there. So in this second stage of enlightenment, you're still experiencing anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, but not as significantly as you were when you were off the path to enlightenment, but they're still there. Then there's the non-returner, the third stage of enlightenment. Here you've eliminated the 5 lower fetters. This type of individual is experiencing discontentedness about once every 2 months, once every 3 months, once every 6 months. You're getting a little bit of ickiness in the mind. The people around you probably don't even realize that you're discontent. That's how insignificant it is. It's very infrequent and it's very insignificant. When it arises, you'll probably notice it within the first few seconds, and boom, it's out of the mind, right? And other people don't even realize that that's the case, that you even were discontent, right? So you need to be very diligent here in this third stage of enlightenment, because your mind can oftentimes become complacent, because you very infrequently experience discontentedness. For all intents and purposes, your life's going quite wonderful in this third stage of enlightenment, but you're still not enlightened yet. You're still getting a little bit of discontentedness here and there. So then, getting to this fourth stage where the mind is actually enlightened, you fully purified the mind. All the fetters are completely out of the mind. You've now attained what's called final knowledge. This ignorance or this unknowing of true reality is completely eradicated from the mind, that you no longer have this, that your mind is fully awake. You fully cultivated wisdom about all the natural laws and how to navigate the world very peacefully. So in this stage of enlightenment, you're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. It'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There's no discontentedness whatsoever. But I don't suggest to people that they ever convince themselves that they're enlightened. Instead, just always and forever, consider yourself unenlightened and just continue to cultivate wisdom for the rest of your life. So even though it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you'll know that your mind's enlightened, but no need to convince yourself of that. It's kind of like if you were playing that game Whack-A-Mole and it has the moles that pop up and you have that little mallet and you're hitting the little Whack-A-Moles and you're knocking them down and you're knocking them down. Well, if you think game's over, you'll kind of hold it down to your side, but then it's not over and here comes another mole and you're too late and you can't whack it. Right? So if you never convince yourself that you're enlightened and you're just standing there vigilantly with your mallet, when all those little moles start popping up, you can boom, boom, boom. So when the symptoms of the unenlightened mind pop up, if you're diligently holding your mallet, boom, you can knock it down. You can knock it down. You can knock it down. But if you think game's over and you're enlightened and now you're just sitting there kind of lackadaisical, now when this symptom of the unenlightened mind pops up, you won't see it and you won't knock it down. So you'd like to stay vigilant at all times and just don't convince yourself that you're enlightened and just know that, okay, it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Wow, these teachings really lead to exactly where the Buddha said they do. Everything's so peaceful. But now there's so many other things in the world to cultivate wisdom about. Right? You can live in this world and be enlightened. In fact, you'll live in this world wonderfully because in the unenlightened state, life can seem quite miserable. Or the words that you used, ma'am, was, it sucks, right? It sucks being unenlightened, right? But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're going to be like, wow, I can do this. This is wonderful. Wow, everybody should be experiencing this. One of the words that I use is I say the party's more fun when everybody's awake. Right? When people are sleeping, they're grunted, they're disgruntled, they're frustrated, they're agitated, they're annoyed. That's not fun. But when everybody's cheerful and happy and polite and kind and friendly, wow, this is wonderful, right? This is great to be in that experience. So by the time you get to enlightenment, life's not going to suck anymore. Life's going to feel wonderful. That's because you've purified the mind of all these causes and conditions. You now have wisdom of understanding this world. Fully understand how this world works. And now you can navigate it peacefully. You've accomplished final knowledge. Okay, so these are the 4 stages of enlightenment. Any questions here? Yeah, Vibhav. You always like to ask questions about attainments. It's the jhanas, it's the 4 stages. He's always got questions about that.
So, I've seen some passages somewhere, not in the book, I think, but maybe, not sure, that say that when you get to stream entry, you see the deathless, like enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
But from what you were just explaining to Lin Feng, that you are already seeing what enlightenment feels like in the jhanas. So for certain periods of time. So what is the difference between seeing that and seeing the deathless when you achieve stream entry?
Yeah, so what the Buddha describes as the first stage of enlightenment is you standing clearly before the door to the deathless, meaning you're squarely in front of it and you can see it so clearly, right? You're not there yet, but you can see it. In the jhanas, you're getting glimpses of it, right? You're not standing clearly in the door. You're just seeing the cracks of the door. You're just seeing the little glimpses of it. That's the difference. And by the way, enlightenment isn't a feeling, right? You're not feeling anything in enlightenment in terms of like the joy and the happiness. It's not a feeling because feelings arise, they change and they fade away. You're experiencing those qualities at all times as unconditioned mental qualities.
Did I say feelings?
Yeah. You said, what do you feel when you're in enlightenment?
The second question is between the 3rd and the 4th stage of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
As you said that you're basically the difference that you explained was basically you're in the 3rd stage, you're feeling or you're feeling some discontentedness maybe once in 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You're experiencing discontentedness once in 3 to 6 months, and then once you get to the 4th stage of enlightenment, you're not experiencing discontentedness anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the discontentedness that you experience in the 3rd stage of enlightenment is related to, say, because you're not fully freed yourself from the taint of, say, ignorance, as an example, that you may do something that is like not fully as understanding the laws of the natural laws of existence, or you do not do something that's not wise, fully wise, and that you feel discontentedness because, or you experience discontentedness because of that.
It's because you still have residual clinging in your mind. So by the time you get to the third stage of enlightenment, you've eliminated central desire, but you still have residual clinging. There's still like a little bit of residual still left over. Even though the fetter itself is completely gone, there's still some remnants of clinging in the mind when you're in the third stage. That's what's causing the discontentedness, the residual clinging.
So then how do you know that you've totally eliminated ignorance and that you're making all wise decisions 100% of the time?
The way that you'll know that you've eliminated ignorance is that for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, there's no discontentedness whatsoever, not even the slightest ickiness, because the ignorance is the very last fetter to eliminate out of the mind. If there's any other fetter in the mind, there's still ignorance. So the way you'll know that ignorance is gone is that you'll have attained final knowledge. And the way you'll know you've attained final knowledge is it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There's no discontentedness at all. Your mind's completely peaceful, not even the slightest ickiness in the mind.
So ignorance is, in a way, can you think of it as what you're saying, as from what I understand, is basically eliminating all the other fetters at that point?
Yeah.
That's then basically you know that you've also eliminated ignorance.
Yes.
So it's not directly related to thinking that, okay, I'm I guess you'll make wise decisions all the time because you've eliminated all the residual clinging at that point, and so you're not making any decisions out of clinging or any craving that you have. So you know that you'll be making wise decisions at that point.
Getting rid of ignorance isn't an intellectual pursuit. There's a certain intellectual understanding that you need, but getting rid of ignorance is that you're actually making wise decisions in your day-to-day life. So for example, when we were young and growing up, we heard from probably our parents and grandparents, don't use drugs, don't use alcohol, don't use drugs, don't use alcohol. And we understood intellectually that this is unwise. We understood it intellectually. But because of our ignorance, we still did it, perhaps, right? We still used maybe drugs and alcohol because the mind intellectually understood something that drugs and alcohol are unwise, but we still did it because we had this ignorance. So the ignorance is eradicated through your practice of the teachings. It's not an intellectual aspect of what we're talking about here. So just understanding something intellectually doesn't mean that the ignorance is eliminated. It's when you're making wise decisions through that knowledge that now your mind is transformed, and that's where the ignorance is completely eliminated from the mind. And the way that you're going to know this is you're going to see that there's not any unwholesome karma coming back to you. Because by the time you get to the third stage of enlightenment, you've been living your life through the Eightfold Path for an extended period of time. And you're not experiencing anything unwholesome coming back to you at all. It's just wholesome results, wholesome karma, because you've been making wise decision after wise decision after wise decision.
I guess I'm a little bit still not clear on the residual clinging that we have. So we're still making wise decisions in the third stage of enlightenment because we've already been living through the Eightfold Path for an extended period of time. And so if there's some, I guess, restlessness and conceit in the third stage of enlightenment. So once you eliminate those, and you probably also eliminated the residual clinging at that point, and then you also eliminated ignorance at that point.
It sounds like you're trying to come up with a decision tree of exactly what's going to happen. That's not the way it works.
Well, not trying to get to a decision tree, but okay. Let me just think about it more.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question regarding to the stream enter, and it's it's for sure like 7 times that is will get enlightened. Sounds like the first is like once you get like a stream enter, you will 100% sure will become like an enlightenment just regarding of the time. This feels like permanent. And then the second one is like the seventh time is also feels like permanent.
Yeah, the natural laws are permanent, right? So the natural laws, it's a permanent thing. So it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, it doesn't fade away. So if someone gets into the first stage of enlightenment, they will get to enlightenment for sure. That's part of the natural laws. That's the way the world functions. And those natural laws don't change because they're unconditioned.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Looks like Chow has a question. Let's see what Chow has to say. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like when you say that, so as a stream enterer, you first be free from the personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior. Does it mean like why does things like happen in this order? Does it mean that we should be more focused on eliminating the personal existence view and these three rather than the sensual desire, or does it mean that they are just easier to be eliminated? That's why they happen like first. And then the sensual desire and ill will happens in the second?
Yeah, so the way that you can look at these stages of enlightenment is look at it as a personal growth plan that the Buddha is providing you to be able to help you see what to focus on at any given time. It's because you need to be able to eliminate, example, let's back up to here. You need to be able to eliminate personal existence view before you actually eliminate conceit. It would be impossible to eliminate conceit if you haven't eliminated personal existence view. Or, for example, if you haven't eliminated sensual desire, it would be impossible for you to eliminate restlessness. So it's giving you a personal growth plan of what needs to be eliminated. But the way that this is working is you start off with the Eightfold Path. You're developing that first because that's a general teaching that's really working to eliminate all of these fetters, but it's a more general teaching. And as you get your arms around the Eightfold Path and you practice it closely, then your mind's going to be moving into the jhanas, those preliminary phases. And when your mind's there and you're starting to get these glimpses and you know that your mind is getting closer to the first stage of enlightenment, that's where your practice pivots and you start focusing on the fetters and you start focusing on this personal existence view. The doubt is going to happen by way of you investigating the teachings, and the wrong behavior and observances, that's going to happen by way of practicing the Eightfold Path. But once you're in the jhanas, you're starting to experience these enhanced qualities of mind. That's where you start focusing on personal existence view a lot closer, because you know that, okay, I can't be experiencing the jhanas if I hadn't put together the Eightfold Path really well. So I've got the Eightfold Path together really well. So now I don't need to pay much attention to that because I'm already doing it well. Let me start focusing on getting rid of this personal existence view. And that's what you start focusing on once you're in the jhanas. And now, once you get into this first stage of enlightenment, now you've been practicing the Eightfold Path and all the other teachings all along. You're in this first stage of enlightenment and you've eliminated these fetters. Now you start really focusing in on number 4 and 5. And you start really focusing on that. So this is a personal growth plan that's helping you to plot your course along your journey to enlightenment.
Okay. So that's like things like, does it mean that we should not put so much focus on like eliminating sensual desire, for instance, from the very beginning?
For you, what I would do, since you and I have talked many times, is I would focus on the Eightfold Path and really getting that fine-tuned very closely, that you really need to commit that to your memory and dial that in really closely so that you're practicing the Eightfold Path really closely. What I'm teaching in this retreat, it's going to be helpful for people to be able to learn these things, but you might not be ready to really focus on some of the things that I'm going to be teaching, especially when we start getting into some of the fetters and stuff. So instead, for you, I would focus on the Eightfold Path. And this is part of a practitioner's journey on the path to enlightenment, is you need to be able to know where you're at any given time. And that way you're making wise decisions about what to focus on first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So for you, and probably for a lot of people, maybe even people that are here, that you're going to really be focused on the Eightfold Path. So that's why tomorrow morning I'm going to teach the Eightfold Path to get started. And that's what you would really like to get your arms around that first, before you really focus on eliminating the individual fetters. Because if the Eightfold Path isn't really well underway, you're not going to be able to eliminate the fetters. The Eightfold Path is kind of a foundational teaching that's going to help you to then eliminate the fetters.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'll share with you guys what a Buddha is. This is a unique type of individual that is rare and unique in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. This isn't a stage of enlightenment. Sometimes people describe this as a stage of enlightenment. They will say everybody is a Buddha, or you're going to attain Buddhahood, or that you have Buddha nature. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught that. He taught about how rare it is that someone is actually a Buddha. A Buddha meets three primary criteria: is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's the first criteria. Then the second one is that having gotten to enlightenment by themselves, they then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. These are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. But then they also meet these other criteria as well. They have a deep, profound memory. Even in the unenlightened state, they can remember countless details about their current life and their past lives as well. And they accumulate all that wisdom in their last life to be able to apply it, to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves. That's how they do it without the help of teachers or guides, because they were able to accumulate all this wisdom and apply it in their last life. Then they can quickly determine the condition of someone's mind by spending time with them. They can actually see the fetters in other people's minds, and then they can offer them teachings to be able to help them to overcome that. An individual who's a Buddha is a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever it is that they teach, they also practice those same things too, because they understand that their students are learning just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. So a Buddha is going to be functioning through their teachings so that a student can observe that and then learn their teachings through their actions. So we refer to this person as a fully, perfectly enlightened one, because they don't have teachers, they don't have guides. If you're learning from someone who is not a Buddha, you'll get to enlightenment perhaps, but you're not going to be fully, perfectly enlightened. Your mind is going to maybe still have a little bit of extra baggage at that point. Maybe there's a certain meditation that you're doing that didn't really contribute to your enlightenment, but you're still doing that particular meditation, right? So maybe 80%, 90%, 95% of the things that you're doing actually led to your enlightenment. But there's still a little bit of extra baggage in your mind that didn't actually contribute to your enlightenment. But nonetheless, your mind is actually enlightened. You're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. By the time this type of person gets to enlightenment, where they don't have any teachers or any guides, they don't have that extra baggage. What they understand about the path to enlightenment is the path to enlightenment. It's very clear for them exactly what is the path to enlightenment. Because if this type of person tries a certain meditation and it works to improve the condition of their mind, then they know this is part of the path to enlightenment. But if they try a certain meditation and it doesn't work to improve the condition of their mind, they will discard it because they understand that it doesn't lead to enlightenment. So by the time they get to enlightenment, we refer to them as a fully, perfectly enlightened one because they fully understand the path and it's very clear in their mind of exactly what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. And then they spend the rest of their life illuminating that path for everybody else to be able to see what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So again, this type of individual is very rare in the world. You'll be plenty pleased with getting to enlightenment, but you won't be a Buddha at that point. Your mind will be experiencing the peace and joy of the enlightened mental state, and you might consider yourself to be enlightened, but you won't be an actual Buddha. This is a rare type of individual in the world. There's some things here that I'm going to share with you about how to know that your mind's not enlightened. This is one of the ways that I teach, is I will teach you what something is, and then I will teach you what something is not. And that helps you to understand what something is by understanding what something is not. So if your mind experiences discontentedness, then you know your mind is not enlightened. And what I mean by this is conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you will then experience a certain feeling. If you notice that your mind's doing that, then you know your mind is not enlightened. And sometimes when people see me teach this, they say, hold on a second, David, I'm not going to experience happiness or excitement or elation or thrill. I'm not so sure if I'm interested in getting to enlightenment. Well, remember, these are conditioned feelings, that there needs to be some condition met in order for you to experience it. It's like my mom and dad are doing this, my brothers and sisters are doing this, my boss is doing this, the weather is this, I have this kind of house, this kind of car, I have this much money in my bank account, then I will be happy, right? So your happiness is shrinking. This is why some people are old and grumpy. Not everybody's old and grumpy, but there's some people who are very old and grumpy because they have all these expectations, all these things that they want in order to be happy. And if those things aren't true, then they're not happy. That's called conditional happiness. That's what you're getting rid of because it's unsatisfactory. That your mind can only be happy when certain conditions are met. So that means your happiness is shrinking the more conditions that you have. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to unconditioned happiness, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order to experience the happiness. So that's what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to experience. So if you notice that you have these types of feelings, conditioned feelings, then you know your mind is not yet enlightened. If you have a craving to tell other people that you are enlightened, then you know your mind's not enlightened. That's one of the best ways to know someone's not enlightened. Someone might roll up to you at a retreat and say, hey, don't tell David, but guess what? I'm enlightened, right? Well, you already know that they're not enlightened, right? Because that's ego, that's arrogance, that's pride, that's being boastful, right? An enlightened being doesn't experience that. If you're so peaceful, if you're so joyful, go be peaceful and joyful. You don't need to come around here and tell us that you're peaceful and joyful. Just go do it. Go be peaceful and joyful. So as soon as someone says, I am enlightened, you actually know that they're not. So enlightened beings don't go around declaring to other people that they're enlightened because that would be the ego. That would be arrogance and pride. And they don't think of themselves in that way. Then if you notice your mind is complacent, where it's dull and lethargic, where it's lacking motivation or enthusiasm, it's lacking initiative or willingness to do something, it's lacking vitality and vigor, then you know that your mind's not enlightened. If you just feel dull and lethargic, because that's what the unenlightened mind will do, is it'll either chase, or it'll swing all the way to the other side where it's dull and lethargic. This middle way that the Buddha taught, your mind will be bright and cheerful and uplifted. You'll have motivation and enthusiasm and ambition in that mental state. So if you're noticing complacency, then you know your mind's not enlightened. So any questions here on what enlightenment is not? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do then, I'm just looking at the time. Normally what I would do is I would teach the 7 factors of enlightenment here, but I'm going to move past this and introduce you to some other things that I've got to share with you guys. This is something that you're going to need to learn, and I'll circle back at some point during the retreat and make sure you learn it, but I'm not going to teach it right now, okay? So what I'm going to share with you is, what are the advantages of getting to enlightenment? And we've talked a little bit about this just a little bit ago, but I share this as part of this retreat. Of course, the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. There's this high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. We've already talked about that. We've talked about the elimination of discontentedness. We talked about this deep wisdom, this politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect. We talked about this personal and professional relationships that are blossoming and that are ease, that there's this harmony. We've discussed this, but here's some things that I haven't talked with you about the benefits or the advantages of getting to enlightenment. That by the time you get to enlightenment, that you're incapable of decline, that the mind is permanently in this mental state. It's physically impossible for you to experience anger in the enlightened mental state. If you actually tried to force yourself to be angry, it would be impossible for you, because the causes and conditions that produce anger, they don't exist in the mind any longer. It's physically impossible for you to experience anger. So your mind is incapable of declining. Even when you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your mind is incapable of declining from that stage. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is not going to ever experience discontentedness ever again. It can't decline or regress backwards. The mind is always in a good mood. You're never in a bad mood. There's no such thing as a bad mood for an enlightened being. It just doesn't exist. All days are good days. You're never having a bad day. Because in the unenlightened state, you'll go out into the world with all kinds of cravings. And if things are going your way and you're getting what you want, you'll say, oh my gosh, this was such a good day, right? But if you go out into the world with all these cravings and they're not getting fulfilled and you're getting angry and frustrated, you'll come home and you'll say, this was the worst day ever. This was so horrible. That's because the mind's not getting what it wants. But when you get rid of all of that, every day is a good day by the time you get to enlightenment. So there's no such thing as a bad mood, and there's no such thing as a bad day. Also, you'll notice that you don't experience tiredness and exhaustion. That in the unenlightened state, when you're out there chasing after things with craving, desire, attachment, you'll get to the end of your day and you're going to be tired and exhausted. And this is kind of wearing on you, that you might feel like you have these heavy bricks on your shoulders or on your feet as you're going home, right? Or you get home, you might feel like this heaviness on the shoulders and on your body. You don't experience that in the enlightened mental state. Your mind is going to experience sleepiness where you need to sleep, but you won't be exhausted or tired. The mind is bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted. It's impossible for the mind to experience being shaken up. It's going to be steady, stable, and unshakable. It's a permanent mental state. And as I was sharing previously, life is no longer a struggle. It's not difficult. You'll be living the ideal life by the time you get to enlightenment. The unenlightened state, it's quite difficult. It can even be described in some situations as miserable. It feels quite miserable in certain situations, right? But by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that experience anymore. That life is no longer a struggle. It's not difficult. There are certain challenges that you're challenged with, and you're meeting those challenges, but you're meeting it with wisdom. You're meeting it with understanding of how the world truly works instead of these struggles and difficulties. So this is the advantages of getting to enlightenment. Anything you guys would like to ask here?
So I had a questions on bodily sensations.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the first stage of enlightenment, are you able to, let's say, your mindfulness is it developed enough that you are able to be aware of the bodily sensations and cut them off and let them go?
Yes.
So at that point, just to repeat just to clarify what you're saying. So if you're in the first stage of enlightenment, you should be able to be aware of your bodily sensation, and at that point cut off and let them go.
Yes.
Okay. And then you're also saying that once you are able to be aware of the bodily sensations and cut off them and let them go, you're 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment.
When you can do that every single time.
Every time. Right.
Yep.
And at this first stage of enlightenment, you should be able to do it.
You're not going to be able to do it every single time. You will be aware of the bodily sensations when they're coming, but you won't be able to cut them off and let them go every single time in the first stage of enlightenment.
So that happens more like in the third stage or second stage or third stage? Or
it's not just one particular stage that's associated with.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one question. Do you mind to do the previous page on the 6, the number 6? It's incapable of decline.
Yep.
And you just mentioned like even that like angry, like force be angry, that is impossible, right? So I just wanted to do like a little bit like stress test is that what I learned is the sexual activity is for sure to generate conditioned feeling.
Yes,
that right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then for enlightened beings, if they have a sexual activity, will that generate conditioned feeling? I know probably enlightened beings won't do that, but if they have to or be forced, will that generate conditioned feeling?
By the time you get to the third stage of enlightenment, you're not having sex anymore. And there's nothing that anybody can do to force you to do that. If you're having sex, you're having sex. It's a choice that you're making. Unless, of course, you're being raped, right? But as a person who's in the third or fourth stage of enlightenment, I wouldn't suspect that you would ever experience any of that, because you've eliminated a lot of your unwholesome karma. By the time you've gotten to the third stage of enlightenment, you have very minimal unwholesome karma. It's all internally within your own mind. Externally, there isn't really any unwholesome karma that you're experiencing. So you're not going to be in a situation as someone in the third or fourth stage of enlightenment where you're being forced to have sex. If you were in the fourth stage of enlightenment, and let's just say you were asleep and somebody came up to you and started playing with your genitalia, you wouldn't experience conditioned feelings in that situation. In fact, when you woke up, you'd be like, you'd probably be disinterested in actually experiencing that. So what oftentimes people do, younger people, is they work their way up to the second stage of enlightenment and they kind of hang out there for a little while. And then whenever you're ready, you might decide to move on to the third and then ultimately the fourth stage of enlightenment. But an enlightened being isn't going to experience any conditioned feelings. It's impossible for them to experience any conditioned feelings for any reason whatsoever. And they're not going to be making decisions that puts them in a situation where they could potentially experience some of the things you're describing. It just wouldn't happen.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to the retreat and help you guys to understand what it is I'm going to be sharing. I started off helping you to understand what is enlightenment, because this whole retreat is, shaped around helping people to actually get to enlightenment. And for some of you guys, you maybe haven't learned with me before. So, and some of you guys have. So what I'm going to be doing is starting out with some of the more core, central, and fundamental teachings as we first get started. But as I explained to you kind of my approach to teaching retreats, I use this particular image to be able to help you understand my approach to be able to teach retreats. Essentially, if we think about the Buddha, even though he didn't look like this during his lifetime, if we think about the Buddha sitting here and you're down here at the bottom of the stairs, the teacher is pointing out the stairs to you. The teacher is describing these stairs to you, helping you to understand how to walk these stairs to get closer and closer to enlightenment. The teacher is not walking the stairs for you. It's you that needs to walk these stairs. So what the teacher is doing is describing these stairs and pointing out these stairs so that you can walk closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. So that's my approach to teaching you. I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm here to guide you. I'm like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. And it's you that's doing the work to be able to accomplish that. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start off in the morning, each morning at 9 a.m. with meditation. We're going to do chanting and meditation. Then by 9:30, I'm going to switch over to doing teaching and having discussions. We're going to take a mid-morning break around 10:30 to 11, and then I'm going to teach some more up until 12:30. And then at 12:30, we're going to take a lunch and free time. We're going to take a break for about 6 hours. And when we take a break, you have the opportunity to go on these excursions that I've planned. If you'd like to do these, we can. Sometimes with a small group, people aren't as interested. With the larger group, sometimes people go. If you guys would like to do these excursions, you're more than welcome to, and we'll organize them. What I'm going to do is each day I'm going to be checking in with you in the morning to see if you guys would like to do these excursions. The way that I plan it is that each day there's a certain event. And today, if you would like to go to the Sunday night walking market, it's right out here. It's available for you. Maybe you guys would like to go walk and spend some time together and get to know each other, hang out with some wholesome people. That might be something that you might choose to do. Tomorrow, what I usually do is take students to the hot springs. If you would like to go to the hot springs and hang out and chat, have some food, experience the hot water, that's a nice thing to do. Then on Tuesday, we usually go to the elephant sanctuary. If you would like to go there, there's that option for you. They'll give you clothes to change into. You can spend time with the elephants. You chop up food. You make medicine for the elephants. They teach you about the elephants. This is a place that they're not caged. They don't do any rides or anything like that. It's just purely a sanctuary that the elephants can just hang out. And you'll see it's a big wide open field. There's not even a fence around the field. The elephants just kind of hang out in that area. And then you're just there learning about the elephants, and they're teaching you about it. And then when you're done, you can take a shower, put your clothes back on, and then you come here. Normally they charge 1,600 baht per person to come and pick you up, take you out there, provide you all the things that you need. They also feed you and then they bring you back. But for us, they charge us a reduced price. They only charge us 800 baht. So if you guys would like to go do this, you're welcome to do that and I'll organize it for you. Then on Wednesday, we usually go to this children's orphanage to be able to provide them some donations and to learn about an orphanage and to be able to help them. If you guys would like to go do this, we can do that. And then on Thursday, we usually go to this reservoir, which is like a recreational area where they have these little bungalows, and it's a place where we can go and sit down, relax, have some good food. We can do some nature walks. If you like, they have a zip line, they have ATVs and motorcycles, they have different other things that you can go check out. They have bicycles that you can ride. They have massages over there that you can get, that kind of stuff. So it's just a time to like hang out on Thursday and just really enjoy our time together. So these are the excursions that I plan, but I'm going to check in with you guys each day to see if you guys would like to do these or not. But just to give me a heads up, how many of you guys are thinking that you would like to go? You don't have to commit to it, but let me know at this point, just so I can get a general idea. Might be interested in going to the hot springs. Is there anybody here that might be interested in that? Okay, so we have several of you guys. Okay, what about the elephant sanctuary? How many of you guys might be interested in that? Okay, several of you guys. How about the children's orphanage? Okay, several of you guys. And then how about the Tung Tao, the recreation area? Okay, pretty much all of you guys. All right. So I'll start working on this because I usually don't plan it until I see who's here, and then I'll start making phone calls and get this all organized for you guys. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm about to talk about now. Yeah. Yep, no worries. And by the way, each one of these things, we usually take transportation. I usually get a van because we're going a lot further distance. Instead of being in one of those little song towels, the red trucks where you're bouncing around on the bench, we usually get a van, which usually ends up being about 250 to 350 baht per person, but it's a lot more comfortable. It's a really comfortable seat. There's air conditioning because we're going a lot further distance than just the way we do typically on our different tours. So that's what I'm going to start organizing, is the vans, so that we can have them available to us for these excursions. So after this 6-hour break that we take, where you can either go on the excursions or you can have free time, then we come back from those excursions and I do some more teaching. From 6:30 to 8:30, I'm going to teach another session. We're going to start with meditation, but then I'll have an evening session where I'm going to teach some topic. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing in terms of the instruction. We'll usually finish up on Friday, usually around 5. With a smaller group like this, it might be 3:30, it might be 4 o'clock or something like that. Because on Friday, we don't do excursions. We actually take an hour-and-a-half lunch break, and then we come back for teaching on Friday. Okay. This is the URL that you might decide to bookmark because it has a detailed schedule of exactly what I'm going to be teaching each individual day. So you might decide to actually look at the schedule because you can see the topics that I'm going to be discussing for each individual session and what time I'm going to be discussing those. So this URL will take you to the detailed agenda, and it actually describes for you each individual class that I'm going to be teaching. So here's what I'm going to be teaching. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting off with breathing mindfulness meditation, teaching you guys that and doing that with you. Then I'm going to be teaching you the 4 Noble Truths, as well as the 3 poisons. That's what we're going to be focused on the morning. Then in the evening, I'm going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation with you, but then I'm going to give you an overview and we'll go into it to a certain level of detail of the Eightfold Path. But since we've already taught the 4 Noble Truths here, it's really going to be the moral conduct section and the mental discipline section in the evening on Monday. Then on Tuesday morning, we're going to start with walking meditation. I'm going to teach you that. And then we're going to discuss the jhanas, the 4 stages of enlightenment. We're going to be discussing those as part of our talks. Then we're going to be doing walking meditation in the evening. And then I'm going to start going in for each individual fetter. I'm going to explain to you in an entire class session for about an hour, hour and a half, what is the fetter? What are the symptoms of it, so that you can confirm that you have this, and then you can see when the symptoms are arising. Then I'm going to teach you how to eliminate it and how to know that you've eliminated it. So I'm going to do that with personal existence view. I'm going to do that with doubt, wrong behavior and observances, and all the others. We're going to mix into this some meditation that you need, like the meditation to realize non-self. I'm going to be teaching you that. I'm going to be teaching you the loving kindness meditation, right? And each time, each class, we're going to be focusing on each one of these fetters until we get all the way to Friday, where then I'm going to be teaching you the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, if you would like to implement that. Then we're going to be talking about dependent origination. This is the ultimate highest teaching of the Buddha, where you can see in these 12 interlinking steps of exactly why you experience discontentedness and why you keep being reborn over and over and over and over again. So that's a perfect time to be able to learn that. And then I'm going to be teaching you about more fully these fetter of ignorance. So each one of these class sessions are focusing on a fetter. And then by the time we get to Friday evening or afternoon, I'm going to teach you how to determine if you've attained enlightenment, how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life, how to receive continued support. And then we're going to kind of have like a closing wrap-up talk where each one of the talks that I give, you guys can ask questions, but maybe I taught something on Monday, and then on Tuesday or Wednesday, you had a thought that you were interested in asking a certain question, but maybe it didn't quite fit in. So that's what this question and answer period is going to be at the very end of the retreat. It's kind of like a wrap up for any miscellaneous questions that you have about anything whatsoever. Because all the way through the retreat, we're going to be very focused and very targeted on a certain topic. But you might hear a topic on Monday that you start thinking about and you have questions on Wednesday, but it doesn't really fit in. But then by the time we get to Friday, we're going to have an all open question and answer period. So that's what that last kind of closing discussion is for. So this is the way I'm going to guide you guys through the entire retreat. Meditation, but then also some talks that are going to help you to be able to cultivate the needed wisdom to purify the mind. Okay, so any questions on this? No questions? Okay. So this retreat is based on this book series. This is the 13 book series that I share. It's over there on the bookshelf. You can download it for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. And I'm starting to put all of this online too, where yes, you can download the PDFs now, but also I'm making it so that you can actually read it right online. So you're going to start seeing this on our website, but you can also get the versions here that you need if you would like to be able to read this. You're not going to be able to read this week, right? It's going to take you time, but this is something that you're going to need over the course of your journey to enlightenment. Okay, so the way that I think about these retreats is, yes, it's helping you to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment, but also what you're doing here is it's your contribution to restoring the teachings of the Buddha back into the world in a way that more and more people can understand what his teachings are. Because right now there's plenty of misunderstandings in the world. And one of the best ways to clear that up is for each individual person to focus on their own practice. And as you're learning and growing and developing in your practice, and you're training your mind to cultivate this wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment, it's essentially like restoring the path to enlightenment, helping people to be able to accomplish the enlightened mental state, but then also that there's more and more beings in the world that understand the path to enlightenment and the wisdom of how to get to enlightenment. So the way that I think about this is by you learning, growing, and developing, it's helping you. It's helping all those around you, and it's helping all of humanity. Because as you become a more loving, kind, warm, and gentle person, a more kind individual, it's going to help you. It's going to help all those around you, and it's going to help all of humanity become more kind and gentle and a loving place to exist. So I really appreciate that you guys have decided that you're interested in learning these teachings. You hear me say that pretty much at the end of every class is thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand, because it's helping us to be able to restore the teachings of the Buddha back into the world, where we can create a whole species of enlightened beings. It's not going to be during this lifetime that we experience that, but if we do the work that we need to do in this lifetime, in future generations, more and more, there's a ripple effect in the world, and more people will be able to learn this wisdom of what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So what we do in a retreat like this, it really matters. Right? That there's a certain number of people here, and you're going to see on different days, there's going to be people coming and going in and out of this retreat at different times. There'll be people coming and going, but what we do, it really matters. So let's make the most of it. Let's enjoy our time together. Let's really look at the teachings of the Buddha and really investigate them so you can get the wisdom that you need to be able to make those improvements that you would like to make. Okay? So that's the way I think about these retreats as well. So with that said, if you guys would like to go to the excursion and have a good time hanging out with each other, you guys can hang out if you like. I'm going to probably hang out here because I have another class I'm teaching at 6:30, and then I have another one that I'm teaching at 9 o'clock. So I'm probably going to hang out here, but usually I go out with you guys to these different excursions. It just depends on what excursion it is. So if you guys would like to join up together, feel free to do that. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Enjoy your evening, whatever it is that you decide to do. Maybe you're even going to come back here and do some meditation. Who knows? But I'm going to be here teaching at 6:30 tonight and 9 o'clock tonight. I've got more classes to teach. But I really am interested to share these teachings with you. It'll be very pleased to share these teachings with you over the course of the week. And as you guys need help, you're more than welcome to reach out, and I'm here to help you guys all week long. Okay? So be well and take care, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Okay? Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.